Howdy guys, how you doing? Welcome to Freakin Friday, and today is story time. And today we are going to be looking at this book, which is the Valkenburg Foundation, The Shattered Mind Plays Dark Tricks. And I've got to say, it's a chronicle of madness, and it's an absolutely brilliant book for Werewolf the Apocalypse. Now, if you haven't played this, I do apologise. There's going to be some spoilers in here. If you have played it, you're going to know where I'm coming from when I'm talking about this book. This is a fantastic book. Now, my idea was to take the guys from rites of passage into New York, where they understand and get to know a bit more about the people and the Garou Society in New York, and then it leads them to the Valkenburg Foundation, and then we move on to our next part of the chronicle. So, the Valkenburg Foundation is split up into 5 stories, I think, and I think it is 5 stories, and it's an amazing book. Yeah, it's 5 stories, and it's an amazing storybook for your players to get into, especially if you're starting off and you've never played Werewolf the Apocalypse before, because it's a nice lead into rites of passage, New York, and then this. So the first story, I've got to say, was pretty cool. It's story 1, which is when the Wolfsbane blooms. Basically, your characters are sent off by a glasswalker in New York to investigate a missing glasswalker who's been found by the Valkenburg Foundation. Now, you can tell it's a serious moment because I'm brushing my hair back. Now, this part of the story is kind of cool. Be prepared to have to roleplay some insanity, because I like to do voices. Okay, I like to do voices for each different character that my group of role players meet. And I like to just mess around, and we have a great laugh with different characters. The hardest thing for me to do is try and keep a straight face when I'm playing a character, but I've done pretty well. Now, there's a character in this called Orson Gravely. Now, he's complete insane. His insanity is just I can't even find words for it. He has got multiple different personalities. He has gone insane due to being in the Umbra, deep in the spiritual world. He's found and brought back. He's coaxed out, because you just can't leave the Umbra. You have to leave the Umbra by your own fruition, basically. You can't just be brought out. Not that I know. There might be a rite somewhere or a gift. But he's brought back, and he's just insane. So when the characters meet him for the first time, he's sort of like scrabbled up into a ball in the corner of the room, on his bed in this like dark sort of like cell, in a mental hospital, so to speak, basically. And it's a place. The Valkenburg is a place where patients are taken that are Garou, that can't come to terms with what they are. So they can't come to terms with being a werewolf, whether that be from human parents or lupus born from wolf parents. I've got to say, it's brilliant, but you do have to really roleplay this insane character by switching to different personalities, and I kind of freaked my player friends as we were doing it, but I think they kind of enjoyed it. I think they kind of enjoy that. I throw all the different voices and all the different characters, and I've created characters on the fly just because they talk to someone, and we kind of like the character, so we keep that character. But it's a really great story because it's the beginning to this adventure, and they're taken on, or they're offered the position as the questing pack for the Valkenburg Foundation, which is a huge honour, and they're given like fetishes, and with that comes like a small moot where they're brought into it, and they get renown. Because for werewolves, renown's kind of important, because the more renown you have, the more you're known. And the more successful your pack are, gaining renown and stuff like that, the more legends are spoken about. You become like a legendary character, basically. The more renown you have, the more legendary you are. And imagine that werewolf communities are quite small, because they're a dying race, basically, a dying breed. And so, you can go to somewhere in Canada and they'll know of you because they would have heard of your stories. So the more renown you have is quite important. So for them, this was absolutely brilliant, because they're kind of like, we're going to be helping poor, innocent, the insane and the mental and stuff like that. So we're going to go out there and do what we can to help them out. And they kind of like that. And then the next part of the story is story 2, which is Hostile Takeover. And this is where it went a little bit tits up, because for them, going back to New York was great because straight away they know the environment. You know, they've seen tons of movies and stuff like that, and they know of it. They've even been there and stuff like that. So they kind of got into being back in New York, and you know, you as a storyteller, you shouldn't just keep going, okay, you're going to go do this, you're going to go do that. You've got to give them the options, and then it's up to them to lead it through. So I tend to do that via text messages during the week, like just updating them on how the story goes and stuff like, or where the story's going and stuff like that, or little hints and stuff. And then what we do is I also give them at the beginning of the session, give them the overall what happened last week and stuff like that. So they kind of lost their way here and there, a little bit untoo sure what to do, but the whole story premise is basically stopping an escaped lunatic, but this lunatic has allied himself both with the corporate boardrooms and the grimy streets, and so he's basically the guy called Masters. He's gone totally insane, and he's a Garu as well. Kind of figured out what he is. He kind of figures out what he is, but doesn't truly understand the whole background and everything like that. And he knows that he can change, which is kind of cool. So it was an amazing story. They played it really well towards the end. At the beginning, they were sort of like all over the place and struggling a bit, but they sort of managed to make it. And the idea is that they've got to save the Central Park Kern from this nutter, this lunatic, I should say, from blowing up or driving a bomb vehicle loaded with bombs there and trying to blow it up, sort of thing. And they managed to do it, and in the process, they sort of kind of break the veil, but don't break the veil because they're forced to do it, sort of thing. But it was an amazing sequence. They did really, really well in it towards the end. And so then that led them on to story 3, which was Skins. Now, Skins is a sad story, and I kind of see it from a few different perspectives, because you have to see it from the bad guy's perspective, especially as the GM, and you've got to see it from the perspective of the players as well. Now, in that, they befriend, they're sent out to do some research on some lunatic lupus, which are wolves, Garu born from wolves, basically, who have been let back out into the wild. And we have to do all the tracking and sleeping and searching and stuff, and they finally find them, and over a period of a day and a half, they sort of, you know, meet up and they befriend them, and, you know, they photograph them and stuff like that. But that night, the pack are sleeping because they've still got to do some more research, and they hear gunshots going off, and, you know, yelling and stuff like that, and vehicles and stuff. So they go to chase them, and when they finally get to where they're going, or where the noise is coming from, they find three dead bodies that have been skinned, and obviously they're the lupus, the wolves, and their bodies have been skinned and their heads have been taken. And so straight away, frenzy rolls, they kick in. I mean, they're angered, they're upset. You know, the players are like, no, and they actually got really upset about this. And they were like, right, let's go get them, you know, this. And I said, well, you've got to make frenzy rolls, because, you know, this is tragic. What you're seeing in front of you is enough to waken the beast within you, and, you know, through just pure tragedy. So one of them, the Silent Strider, the Theurge, just loses it and frenzies, and he's given two options: either to run away, which is Fox Frenzy, or just go berserk. And he says, no, I'm going berserk. So the others just leg it basically away from him, seeing that he's changing, and he just runs as fast as he can in Krynos form, which is like, you know, 8 foot, 12 foot tall werewolf, after the vehicles. And he manages to shoulder barge, which was pretty impressive. He shoulder barges one of the vehicles, and then has killed, pretty much just rips into the occupants, but the other vehicle manages to escape. So basically they finally get to him. He calms down. They then you know, head off to find the other vehicle. That obviously they find loads of IDs and stuff like that. They find the place where the vehicle came from, and the members of staff come from, and they're just drunken hunters basically, but they all work in one place. And they manage to find out that the other vehicle is being driven by this other geezer. And so they go looking for him. Now they go to the place, to his house, and the character's name, and if you don't want any spoilers, just fast forward. But the character's name is Samuel Heights. Now Samuel Heights is a fantastic character. I mean, an amazing character. Now this is why I'm saying you've got to look at his point of view. He is kinfolk. Now, kinfolk is part of the Garu who have never changed into a werewolf. They're not werewolves, basically, but they have the seed in them. So I may be kinfolk, and I may have children, and one of those children may grow up to be Garu, may have the seed to change into, or the genetics to change into a werewolf. But when I see a werewolf, it doesn't freak my mind, because the chemicals in my brain sort of thing just sort of like allow me to see it for what it really is. But I'm not scared of it. And he's always been kinfolk are kind of treated quite badly in some societies and stuff. And he has always just wanted to be Garu. So he goes around, he finds a way to basically, a ritual to basically turn himself into a Garu, but he needs the skins of other Garu, basically. So that's why it's called Skins. Now, it's a beautiful story. I absolutely love it, because you've got the loss of the tragedy of the dead lupus, or the lupus that had been skinned and killed, and then you've got his story, which is all he ever wanted to do was be a Garu, because he felt that he would do more and be more for the Garu society and stuff than just a kinfolk, and he should have had that right. He should have been his. So, you know, whether it's a selfish need, of course it's a selfish need, but at the end of the day, it's an amazing, amazing story, because what you can't do is let your players kill him. And, you know, it sort of says, you know, he's got to get away. And you kind of want him to get away, because he's the kind of character that you can bring back later. The kind of character where the players may have to work with him, you know, or he may be another thorn in their side. You know, it's kind of nice to let that character go and escape. So he does escape in the end anyway, but they were desperate to kill him. I mean, they really wanted to kill him. But they have to go to his house, and his house is amazing. It's called the house that Sam built, and it basically is booby trapped. And now it's worth adding some extra booby traps. Now, I've talked about this when we were talking about the last time we talked about story time. But it was an amazing story. But from there, once that's complete, we then move on to Weird Science, which is story 4. Now, Weird Science, basically, the Garu, or our heroes are told about a Garu who's being held in a medical facility in an old military base. And so they have to go in and save this person. And they suddenly discover that there's more to this person than just a body laying there, because the soul's missing. So they follow like a silver thread into the Umbra, to this pocket realm where they find a lost totem. Now, totems are spiritual beings that basically give Garu special gifts, abilities and stuff like that, but they watch over the pack, and the pack honor them, sort of thing. They're sort of like blessed. They bless the pack, basically. And so they find this totem of respect, which is a thing called Mirahata, which is like a fish part elk part something else. And by taking that totem on, they can then gain massive amounts of benefits from having him as a totem. But they also have the totem of the bear, so they had to do this whole chatting to the bear, and it was like, yeah, of course, it's the totem of respect, why not? And as you may guess, I love doing voices. Anyway, so they sort of like take this extra totem on, and you don't get to take 2 totems on, but for the story it allows you. As long as you do this, you get that extra totem, which is pretty cool. And it's a totem of respect, and it allows them to honour the traditional ways, and that's the ban. So if they fail to honour traditional ways, then he's going to get angry with them and stuff like that, so and may leave them. So it's now forced my players, to be a bit more respectful of others, which is kind of cool, because beforehand they were a bit sort of like, I still think they were getting their heads around the whole respect thing, and now, because they've got totem of respect, they have to be a little bit more respectful towards the traditions of the Garou, which is really cool because it's really going to sort of change their gameplay. So they save the person, the Garou, and they escape, and they're passing on the knowledge of Mirahata and word to other Wendigo tribes and stuff like that. So that's absolutely amazing, absolutely brilliant. So that went really well. And then we moved on to the Dark Union, which is story 5, which is basically the dark secret of the Foundation is revealed. The pack must ally with the insidious Black Spiral Dancers to avert the coming disaster. Now, we're going to do a thing about Black Spiral Dancers another time. But Black Spiral Dancers are Garou that are corrupted by the worm. But they harken back all the way back to a tribe called the White Howlers, which were once part of the Garou nation. And for whatever reason, well, I know what the reason is, but it's really long-winded. But for whatever reason, they basically kind of turn to the dark side, so to speak. I'm making this as simple as possible because this video goes on for ages if I really go into the Black Spiral Dancers background. So they kind of turn up in this story and they attack the Valkenburg Foundation. Our heroes are forced to fight back. In the process, one of the Spiral Dancers falls in love with one of our characters. That was hilarious. And she leaves like a dagger above his headboard while he's sleeping with a little love heart on the end. And it's these daggers are basically used in ritual fighting to decide who's going to be the daddy in the relationship, so to speak. Who's going to be the master of that relationship. Who's the alpha and who's the beta, sort of thing. And so that's kind of cool because they've got that little side story happening, and then you've got the main story, because the reason why the Black Spiral Dancers are there is they've discovered that there's Banes in the facility that are trying to gain knowledge for the Woodham, or the worm, so to speak, to basically learn how Garou work. And these Black Spiral Dancers don't like that. They don't like the fact that they're being taken apart. The lunatics are being taken apart, and there won't be a need for them as Black Spiral Dancers anymore, because he can just manufacture his own. The worm can create his own, an army of changing breeds. So they ally with our players and they go in and fight the big bad guy. So overall, it's a really great story. Now, I'm not going to say what happens because it is brilliant, and it really is brilliant, because there was a lot of tension, because our good guys really wanted to hammer the bad guys, but they couldn't because they had to work together in order to save the day. Now, so that's the Valkenburg Foundation. All in all, it's a great story. It's got a hell of a lot going on. It details about the lunatic Garou have cracked under the strain of their change. It also talks about the puppeteers and the wrathful Samuel hates, I think it is, and it gives you a lot of information and a lot of great story stuff to use as well, so you can actually do some really lovely little bits. Overall, I'm going to give this 8 out of 10. 8 out of 10 because it's a really, really good story. So if you haven't played it, go ahead and play it and have some fun with it. Now, after the Valkenburg Foundation, I've got a lot of books or source books that say rage across something or other, like the Amazon, rage across Russia, rage across Australia, rage across the Appalachians and stuff like that. There's just loads and loads. Now, I gave the choice. I gave a choice to the players. Basically, I rolled a dice and said, roll a dice, whichever the number is the book that we're going to be playing. So we're playing. The next book is Rage Across the Amazon, and we've already started this. We literally started it last week. Rage Across the Amazon is a really great story. Now, I'm not going to give too much away because obviously we're playing it, and I know for a fact that the players that I'm playing with watch these videos. So all I'm going to say is this. It's a source book, okay, with loads of little story ideas in there. And it's up to you as the GM how you run it, because you can either have all the players just fighting, which is great for your runes, the warriors in the party, but not so much fun for like all the others. So you've got to try and get a balance there, because there's not just, the mission briefing in this is all about saving the Amazon from Pentex and stopping them from turning it into like just deforestation, using up all the resources there and stuff like that. So the Garou see this as the last bastion of hope, trying to save this place from Pentex and the worm, and it's, you kind of don't want to just do a story that's all about just fighting. So for this one, I want to kind of have an Apocalypse Now story, which is that journey. And I want the characters to become more, learn more about themselves, and I kind of want to also them to learn about their environment as well, because there's a whole host of bits and pieces in this book that they haven't run into yet. So like the other changing breeds, there's also, I mean, yeah, there is the fighting side, but there's a huge spiritual side to the Amazon as well. And even though it gives you some stories, it does give you a load of short stories, but there is a big story in the back of here as well, which you can use. It's kind of cool. So I kind of want this to be like their Vietnam, but they kind of like get to know one another a bit better and also get to understand what their role is within the group. I'm kind of expecting like maybe a loss here and there. I'm kind of expecting that maybe one or two players may die. And now I'm not saying that because I want them to die, because no GM should just go out of their way to kill it, but they just generally roll the worst dice in the world. And I kind of want to give them that firefight aspect, but I kind of, and they're, you know, you're running into first teams and stuff like that as creatures from, from different changing breeds and stuff like that are in the Amazon. And the werewolves are out there trying to obviously save the Amazon from Pentex and deforestation, but they're also there to, you know, to gather cairns and find cairns, places of power and stuff like that. And if it means taking it from another changing breed, then they'll do it. And there's some parts in this where they've already done it. So I kind of like this. It's going to be an interesting one to see how it goes. So far, it's gone really, really well. The way that I introduced them to it was they got a message from a spirit that was sent from Golgol Firstfang, who's the war chief, the high war chieftain of the Amazon, and he's basically calls them to war. So it's going to be interesting to see how they deal with each other in that situation, because there's always a lot of rivalry I tend to find with our guys. They always kind of want to, you know, change stuff in the fact that we've gone through a few pack leaders. And our last pack leader basically was challenged last week. And he was challenged by a Wendigo, who's one of our other players. And they kind of, instead of scrapping it out, they kind of came to an understanding. And it was kind of interesting to see how that played out. So now we've got a new pack leader in the group, and he's a Wendigo. And this is kind of Yucatana. The Yucatana heavily are involved within the Amazon. You've got a lot of the other tribes down there now as well. So it's going to be kind of interesting to see how this all plays out and how the players deal with whatever I throw at them. Now, last week's story was that they went on a mission and they find a village that has been taken over by Pentex, and there's patrols in the area, so they sneak down. So it's imagine like it's Nam, and all the films that you've ever seen with Charlie Sheen and stuff like that. Michael, I was going to say Michael Douglas then, but he's never been in a Nam movie from what I know of. And they make their way down into like the undergrowth, and they're sort of crawling along. You know, and then they start, get their binoculars out and they're watching what's going on down below. And the Theurge sort of slips into the Umbra, and he can see something within the tent area, like a large thing, spiritual thing in there. So they're now planning their raid to hit the base, basically, which is going to be quite exciting to see how that works. Now, that's tomorrow's session, so I'll let you know about how that works out when we finish this story. Or whether when I do the next update. So far it's been really good. So we've gone from rites of passage into New York, and then from New York we've gone into the Valkenburg Foundation, and now we're in the Amazon. And so now they're rank 2. So they've just got to rank 2. A few of them have anyway, and I kind of think they're quite excited by the privileges that come with that rank, you know, so obviously they're now Fostons and they're no longer Claves, and so, you know, they're higher rank now, so they can talk down to the lower ranks, which is kind of cool, and that makes them happy. I can see them smiling. As soon as they hit rank 2, they were very happy about it. But each one of them had a challenge. So for the Theurge, who's the spirit talker, I set him a challenge which was 3 riddles, and he got to choose by rolling a dice how hard the riddles were, and they were pretty tough, but he managed to do them. And we sat down on one-to-one session, we did it, and he solved them. So he's kind of the right player to be playing the Theurge, but I just need to guide him in the sort of sense where he gets more into the talking to the spirit side of things, and more spirits instead of fighting and stuff like that. Because you want to try and keep the characters in their auspice, because each one serves a purpose. Now, the next one to go up a rank was the Galliard, and for that I made him stand up and recite part of the story that he's been playing in. But make it as theatrical as possible, and it was brilliant, and he was really good. He made it rhyme here and there, and you know, he really thought about it. It was lots of hand gestures and stuff like that, and I think if you can get them to do that instead of just rolling dice, it's much more fun, because they become they make it their own, for one thing, and they become much more aware of what they're trying to do, and they, you know, anybody can just roll dice. Oh yeah, I've made it, I'll spend a willpower, yeah, it's a success, blah blah blah. But when you actually get them to do it, they're reciting stuff. That means they've got to remember what happened in the story. They've got to, and because he's a Galliard, he needs to make that story really amazing as well in order to capture, you know, the audience. So it was absolutely really cool. Now, tomorrow I've got to do the Arun, who's been away, who's just got back. Now he's got his challenge tomorrow, and the Aruns are the warriors, and it's going to be a difficult challenge because he has to fight a higher rank, rank 2, in order to gain rank 2. So I've got a character from a book who's going to scrap him, and it's going to be quite exciting. And if he manages to beat him, then he'll gain his rank. If he fails it, then he's still rank 1. So we'll see what happens. Anyway, guys, if you get the chance, go check these books out. There we go. The Valkenburg Foundation, A Rage Across the Amazon. Amazing, absolutely amazing. And I'm going to see you very soon. You take care.